Hello, hi there. My name is Marcy to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing my Saturn return story, and to be specific, my Saturn in Aquarius return story. And according to me, or to my experience, I felt like it was very dramatic and eventful. And right now I can laugh about it. I am still going through my Saturn return. It's going to end in March 2023, and it began in March 2020. Yeah, March 2020. Yeah. So what does the planet Saturn represent in astrology? Saturn is the planet of hard work. It's the planet of limitations, restrictions, and just growth. Yeah. And the Saturn return the Saturn return is an astrological event that happens between the ages of 27 and 30, or 27 and 30, another one maybe around the age of 58 or 59, and then if somebody is lucky to live enough, they'll have their third Saturn return by the age of 87, just around there. And Saturn usually takes around 28 years to return to the original sign that it was in when you were born. Now, for most people, like in layman's terms, sometimes these people call like a quarter life crisis. Those ages 27 and 30, a midlife crisis around that 58, and then yeah. So yeah, but in astrology we call it like the Saturn return. And Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian, the sign of like progressive thinking, individuality, but also really having a cause for bettering, or for bettering like the whole of humanity. Yeah. So most Aquarian people, in whichever field they are in, or also depending on the house that your Aquarius is placed, then that is going to really show off in the kind of work that you do. Yeah, and usually the Saturn return, like usually is a time of crisis in most people's life between those ages. So yeah, I started experiencing mine in 2020, but really I would say I started feeling that energy way before then, or maybe at least 1 year before, like the planet Saturn returned into Aquarius. And just before I continue, I'm just going to mention a bit of my Aquarius placement. I have an Aquarius sun in the 10th house, so that means I also have an Aquarius midheaven. I also have my Mercury in Aquarius in the 9th house. And another Saturn placement that I have in my birth chart is that I have my North Node in the 9th house in Capricorn. I also have an Aries moon in the 11th house, which is ruled by the sign of Aquarius. And also the interesting thing is that all my Aquarius placements are squared by Pluto or 8th house energy. Pluto squares my Mercury, my Sun, and my midheaven. And also I have my Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn in the 8th house, which is like ruled by Scorpio, squaring my moon. Yeah, so just to put that out there. I'm really going to mention some of the areas that I really felt this energy, and like I said, I just started feeling like something was off, or something something was coming. I really couldn't explain what it was, but I just felt like something was off in my life. And this for me began began in 2019. And a Saturn return usually is a time to, by the time Saturn returns to your sign, most of us have made commitments in life, about career, about our belief systems, about our relationships and things like those ones. Like, you are the age of 27. Some people have already been married and things like those ones. And for me, like the places where I felt it the most was in my 9th and in my 10th house. And I wouldn't really say that I didn't resonate with this Aquarius energy, but it was really not to the extent that I didn't expect it to be that way. By the time, my life right now, before my Saturn return and after my Saturn return, is completely different. Like, oh my God, I would have never, ever, ever envisioned my life would have just been so different. And these themes in my life really played, but yeah, they really played in my life, but not that way. For example, in my ninth house, um, that's basically what I studied. I went to school. I have a Bachelor of Divinity. I have a master's in religion, society, and global issues. So these fields of philosophy, higher education, um, or yeah, and higher education, yeah, or learning. I studied another master's, but I never completed it in higher education. Yeah, yeah. So these themes have, I had invested a lot of that in my life, but I really didn't think I would change really. Oh, let me just continue the point. And then in my 10th house, I knew that I wanted to work. I've always wanted to work in a humanitarian setting. When I did my internships, or any work that I really did, I really did in a humanitarian, like social justice based kind of setting. I did my internship in an NGO, and yeah, and always thought that was the career. I also knew that I wanted to have a career that had something to do with media, or something that had to do with like teaching or lecturing in philosophy or religion or something like that, but in the more like in a more conservative like way. So when Saturn returned, the crisis that I found myself in, I had studied abroad all my life. So all my friends, all my groups, I left them where I was, and I was coming back to my country. I'm originally from Kenya. And then, so because after my high school years, between ages of 18, and I was now coming back to my country when I was 27 or 28, around there, I really didn't have, the first thing that happened, I really didn't have a support system here, because I had just not really interacted with people from my own country. I had also left for school when I was pretty young, so I had never lived with my parents as an adult. Yeah, so that is all where it began. I was just going through my life, and I thought it's just going to be something normal. Like I would go home, apply for a job in an NGO, get a job, and yeah, just move on, push on with my life. If it wasn't working, I was just going to apply to another school. That's what I had been doing for all those years, just going to school. I was like, yeah, it's just going to be another continuous cycle. But, whoo! So the first thing that happened when I came back home is all my support system around me just really failed. I didn't have friends. My family doesn't really understand me. My main support system was my sister. We were not really vibing like that. I was not in a relationship. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any connection in my country. And I was like, oh my God. And one thing about Saturn is about ego like development. So yeah, so everything that I was holding on to as anything around me, I couldn't hold on it to anything. And really, this really brought a crisis into my life, and my mental health especially just went down. My mental health, it was really, really bad, honestly. It was so bad. I didn't, like, I had all like depression. I was depressed, and just all those systems on your life is not working, and things around you are not cooperating. And I was like, what is this? And then expectation versus reality, they were just not matching. Yeah, and this whole thing about just really growing up and learning how to be my own self, was hard. So also Aquarius is the sign of the individual, but also fighting for a just cause, or finding like your sacred rage, or some form of injustice that really, really pisses you off. So for me, when this turned, the first place that was hit was my ninth house. So the house of my spirituality, of my religion, of other worldviews, and things like those ones. Having Saturn in my ninth house, before I was really raised in a very conservative Christian background. And my dad is, it's just like, my dad, for example, is a religious leader, and not just like the average religious leader, but very staunch and very conservative. So growing up, things like wearing trousers was considered a sin. Listening to secular music was a sin. You couldn't drink alcohol. You couldn't have sex before your marriage. Uh, or things like those ones, some of the, like, so we had to fast, things like heaven and hell, just all this very dogmatic, like, Christian belief system. And it's not because I had not really been I had not really seen other cultures or being introduced to other cultures. That's what I'd seen since I left home. When I went to campus, for example, my campus had students from 29 different countries. When I went, and before then I had gone like to cultural exchange. I had gone for a cultural exchange program like in Fiji with people from all over the world. um when I was living in Norway or in Europe, most of my classmates were from different countries, different belief systems, secular, and also living in Norway that is pretty secular. So it's not like I was not exposed to other cultures and other religions or other world system, but I just really never questioned what I thought or what I knew. So one of the things that really came flying out of the window was my belief system. Uh yeah, and I really had to really evaluate, what do I believe? What are my views about God? What are my views about religion and things like those ones? And another coincidence that really happened after this really low time in my life, and I didn't have anything more to lose. I felt like I'd lost everything: my friends, my job, my status, my stability, everything. So I think that's when the universe started to really cooperate with me, and that's how I went really deep into digging, looking at other world religions, other belief systems. For example, what I'm doing right now, into astrology. Yeah, and I can smile about it right now because I feel like I'm free. I feel yeah. And in my 10th house, like career wise, I said one of the thing about being an Aquarius and having an Aquarius midheaven is to really connect to people through technology, and also expanding like your audience or something like that. So I had always had people would come and tell me that they thought maybe I was studying theology, I would be a preacher, but I never wanted to be a preacher, no. So I'm like, no, that's not true. Or they're like, oh, maybe you can be a motivational speaker or something like that, like somebody who talks to a large group of people and inspire change and things like those ones. Uh, and then the thing that I really found, another thing is what I think this is because of my moon in the I think this is because of my moon in the 11th house. I really had to define what I meant by community and who are my support system. Because one interesting thing I found is that during this difficult time in my life, the people who I had known, like people who were like not really friends but associates or acquaintances, associates or acquaintances really wouldn't help me much. I didn't have anybody really to reach out. My really close family, my parents, they didn't understand what I was talking about. I was reading things that were considered taboo. I was reading astrology. I was studying ancient Kemet, other religions, and part of it that really fueled this whole journey is because at that particular point I also started teaching courses at a local college here in the area of philosophy of religion, sociology of religion, world religions, ethics. And if you've ever taken those courses, they really emphasize these existential questions. For example, is religion man-made, or is religion or was it made by God? Why do you believe a certain religion? Why do you have certain philosophical views? What questions are there for the afterlife and things like those ones? So that really fueled me. Yeah, and also really a lot of studies like in ancient Kemet. I just really dug into it, and me having my Mercury squaring Pluto, it makes me really a bit obsessive or just very intense. When I'm really studying something, I'm really going deep into it. And for the whole of 2020, that's basically what I did. And I just found a whole world outside of what I believed or what I knew. Yeah. Okay, I was talking about community. So I found that the places where I found the most like emotional sustenance was from online. So I was mostly watching YouTube videos and reading forums, hearing people talk about their own experiences, and yeah, and another thing about having an Aquarius midheaven is really finding your own unique path, doing something that has not been done before, or something that is not really popular. And this was scary for me, really, to be honest. When I got like into like occult knowledge, looking at for example, astrology, I never seen anybody around me doing that, especially culturally. To be honest, I'd never seen like any, I'm sure the Africans who are into astrology, but like that way, or what I'd seen around me before. I'd really identified myself in this like very religious background. All my friends, I met them through school, in religious, in like who are doing something similar to me, like studying religion or something like that. Yeah, so I'd never really seen anybody who was into astrology or was into like occult knowledge and numerology and tarot cards and things like those ones. So it was really, really scary for me. Yeah. And my family definitely wasn't going to allow that, but I knew that was the right thing for me. So, and then also when I began, I was really preaching to people and telling them, oh, this is the information that I found. Do you know what the word Israel means? Or do you know what ancient Kemet is? Or do you know what Egypt is? Or do you know what this? And I was like, oh my God, it wasn't being received very positively. So at a particular point, I just decided to shut up, because nobody was taking me seriously. And then, so I also, not seriously, but they were really offended. So so by then I just really had to stand as an individual. And in my career, I was like, yeah, how about starting a YouTube channel? I know I want to I give information, or I always thought like I would be standing in an audience, and for me this was working just enough, like lecturing. Yeah, but I was like, yeah, how about sharing information in this age of media and what I know? Yeah. So the biggest change, and also another thing that really came up in my life was my relationships with everybody, and that's the issue of codependency. Codependency, feeling like you're not powerful on your own, having all these characteristics where you wait for other people to validate you, what you believe, what you know, and if they're not okay with it, then you're not okay with it. That really took a hit in my life. And when that began, I also had to do a lot of inner child work, looking at my childhood, if I had any childhood trauma, yeah, and things like those ones. Shadow work, anything that has to do with the psyche of the human being. And just I think that's my Mercury squaring Pluto. So I started watching like true crime, so interesting. Some of my favorite YouTubers now became people like Eckhart Tolle, Lisa A. Romano, like Lisa A. Romano. I watch a lot of astrological, of course, videos and things like those ones, but just content that is really, really going there. So I think right now I can say that I've found like my niche, really. And for me, that is the intersection between religion and relationships, because I find that me myself, having experienced that, and I'm saying, or religion, or just some worldviews, um yeah, can sometimes hinder people can sometimes hinder people growing to their fullest potential, or in the same, like in the same way, like there's this quote that says that religion is the opiate of the people. And especially if you grew up in families where your parents might not have been addicted to any substance, but they were addicted to religion, you'll still end up coming you'll still end up what's the word you'll still end up growing up, you still have the same wounds and traumas and things like those ones, or some problems, not really problems, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. As an adulthood, as somebody who was raised in a family that was like that, so issues with codependency, alcohol, substance abuse, and all the whole thing, yeah. And also, I'm not really against religion like that, not really. But my problem is some of the structures can be really oppressive towards people, and anything that takes power away from people and gives it to something outside themselves, or makes them passive in this life, then no. or makes them not really, or makes them unconscious of the way that they are relating in the world, or their responsibility in the world, then I think that the structure that really has to be torn down or really be reevaluated. I think that's the word, reevaluated. Yeah. So yeah, so I think that's really it. I'm not really against religion like that, um or worldviews, but I just find some of them do more harm than good. If you grow up, for example, in a family, like for me, a very conservative Christian family, some of your talents and gifts, your, okay, how do I put it, you find most people, because of their religious beliefs, can be emotionally aloof, or not really, okay, the word is not really take a human being as an individual, but as an extension of themselves. So you have parents who just really hammer this, that, do that, give you all kind of responsibilities and expectations that are not really true to yourself. Maybe that's not what you want to do, and just demonize certain things that are not really, are just a really part of the human experience. A lot of things like spiritual, like bypassing and all that. You find sometimes there are just causes or things that are going into society that people are supposed to fight for. And in my culturally, for example, something like, we have like a problem, like in my country, sometimes the politics, things like poverty and things like those ones, and religion will make people or Christianity sometimes, or the type of Christianity that is practiced here, really makes people passive. So instead of really like fighting for their rights and electing the right people and going through structures and having organizations that really take care of things like those ones, they will probably say, like, let's just pray. Something like, for example, mental health now, it's really developing, but in the Black community, it's not really something that is spoken about. It's more like a taboo. So if you tell somebody you're doing your inner child work, or you're going to see a therapist, people are like, something wrong with you, like, just pray. No. Yeah, so those are some of the things. Yeah, so my Saturn return really changed my life completely, and I never really thought I'd be standing against some of these systems that I had been with, or I had been inside, in that kind of way. Yeah. But I'm also grateful for it, really. There's nothing important in this life than being authentic to myself. And also, I'm not really scared of being an individual, because I cannot really control other people. I can always control myself, and just really having a sense of self. What I value doesn't mean necessarily another person has to value, and if they don't, then that's fine. Before, that would really ache my heart, like, why don't you agree with what I'm believing or what I value? But right now I'm like, okay, it's fine. Yeah. And also believing that the right community for me will come to me. Yeah, the right community for me will come to me. So with that, I'm just going to end my video here, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.